The Roman Empire is starting to crumble now in 533 BC. It's starting to crumble, it's coming under pressure. The Vandals have been working against Rome for a number of years. By the time you get to 533, it says, "For the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return." In 533 AD, Constantine, sorry, it's not Constantine, the emperor now is Justinian. The Emperor Justinian sends his general to go and make war with the Vandals. He makes a successful battle in North Africa, comes back after this warfare, but things are still going bad in the kingdom.
In verse 30, it's 533.
That's right, sorry, we're in verse 30, and the year is 533 AD. And it's dealing with the warfare with the Vandals. The Emperor is Justinian, and they've just had a major battle with the Vandals, and they've won the battle. He's come back triumphant, but there are still issues going on in the kingdom. And the last part of the verse says, "And he shall have indignation against the holy covenant, so shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant." So the people that forsake the holy covenant, okay, so the people who are against the Holy Covenant is dealing with the priesthood or the popes that are already centered now in the city of Rome, but there are also a false Christianity in Constantinople. So this against the Holy Covenant is dealing with the Pope of Rome. And when it says that he's going to have intelligence, it means he's going to have communication or a dialogue. And so there's an argument going on in the kingdom of who has the correct religion, because there's a religious warfare going on between the Pope of Rome and the Pope of Constantinople. They're having an argument. Who is the ruler? Who is the chief of this Christian religion? So Justinian makes a decision, and he gives or lends his support to the Pope of Rome. So this intelligence or this communication that Justinian has with the popes in 533 AD, he says this. He says that the Pope of Rome has the authority, the religious authority, or he's the corrector of heretics. So the Pope of Rome can decide what is true religion and what isn't. Okay? He's the head of the Christian church. He's been given that authority by Justinian, who is pagan Rome. And all that happens in the year 533 AD. So when we come to Revelation 13, we see that he gave him his power, seat and authority. And this authority was given in 533 AD. And we can see that pagan Rome was the power that did that.
What's the date?
533 AD. We've really come to the end of the history now of pagan Rome, and we're now into the history of papal Rome. Papal Rome's history is in two stages. I'm going to go through this fairly rapidly now. From verse 31 to verse 35 is the first history from the start to end of papal Rome. The second part of the history goes from verse 36 to 40a. I'll do 40 part A, the first part of the verse. let me actually not put 40 here. I'm going to put 39. I'm going to put 39, but you can include, it does go up to verse 40, but I'm going to give it 39. This first part of the history is dealing with part 1 of Papal Rome. This is part 2 of Papal Rome. Part 1 and part 2. And the theme of this section is persecution of God's people. Persecution of God's people. This theme of this section is again dealing with Papal Rome, but it's dealing with persecution against God. So this is against his people and this is against God. There are two warring elements that are going on. When it comes against God's people, this is physical harm. So he comes to hurt God's people. This theme here is really to do with the religious warfare, or religion, or a spiritual warfare. So let's pick up from verse 31, and verse 31 is a very interesting verse. I'll raise that in a minute. It says this: "And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate." So there's a lot of things happening in verse 31. Can I erase that? So verse 31 is talking about when pagan Rome comes off the scene completely and Papal Rome come onto the scene. So a number of things happen. It says that arms stand. It says arms stand for him, or arms stand. So it says arms shall stand up on his part. So arms stand for him. The him is Papal Rome, and he's the king of the north, remember. He was already king of the north in 2 verses before this. And then these arms do 3 things. The first thing they do, it says that they pollute the sanctuary of strength. The next thing that they do is they take away the daily sacrifice, and the next thing that they do is that they place the abomination of desolation. So 3 things are happening here. You have arms stand up for the papacy, and then these arms pollute the sanctuary of strength, they take away the daily, and they place the abomination of desolation, or they place the abomination that maketh desolate. So let's quickly fill in what that history is dealing with. This bit gets confusing to people, but hopefully I'll try and make this simple. I'm not going to field questions on this, so if you don't get it, ask me later on. If you go to Daniel chapter 7, okay, you have a 4th beast, okay, and then you have 10 horns. This is Daniel 7. Is it okay with that? Everybody okay? fourth beast and 10 horns. The 10 horns go to 7. Okay, 3 horns are plucked up. Those 7 horns represent the nations of Western Europe that end up becoming what we understand to be Europe today. Yes? The fourth beast represents pagan Rome. Are we okay with that? Now what we're so inclined to do is we're always inclined to separate these into 2 separate entities and say that's pagan Rome and these are Germanic tribes and they're totally independent and separate from one another. But Daniel 7 teaches otherwise. It teaches that the horns were part of the beast. Yeah? So when you get that idea and that concept fixed in your mind that the horns are part of the beast, you begin to see that the horns are actually pagan Rome as much as pagan Rome is pagan Rome. Okay? When you get to grips with that, when you see what the arms are that stand for him, you will find that there are 2 arms that stand for the papacy. 2 arms that stand for the papacy. This is the first arm and this is the second arm. And what I mean by arm is an army or a host. An army or a host or a power stand up for the papacy, and there are 2 power bases that it has. 1 and 2. The 7 horns and the fourth beast. Is everybody okay with that? Okay? If you don't get to grips with that, you get lost in your history and prophecy. Okay? Let me introduce an idea which is develops this thought. Okay? That develops this thought. When you go to Daniel 11 verse 45, okay, when you go to Daniel 11 verse 45, it says, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, and he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. I'm really familiar with that. Okay, let me draw the picture of what that's showing. You have a glorious holy mountain, okay, and it says, he shall plant tabernacles of his palaces between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. So there's seas in the plural. You have 2 seas, one here and one here. And it says there's a glorious holy mountain between them where he plants the tabernacles of his palace. Okay? Hopefully we'll have time to just quickly address that. But you'll see it says seas in the plural. Okay? Those seas represent multitudes, nations and peoples, yes? You'll see that the support system for the papacy in this time frame, how many support systems does he have? 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay? The symbology is the same. The time setting for Revelation, for verse 45 is not this time setting, is it? It's in the future. If you go to Revelation chapter 17, okay, and you look at the beast with 7 heads, without going into the complexity of that, you find it has 7 heads and an 8th head that comes up after it, doesn't it? Yeah? So when you look at the historical context of that, at the end of the world, you're going to get 3 heads. The 6th, the 7th, and the 8th, which is that phantom head. Okay? So you're going to have a similar position where you're going to have the 8th head and the 6th and the 7th. You see the same picture work because this 8th head here is the papacy, and the 6th and the 7th are the 2 support systems that hold the papacy together. This imagery is discussed in Revelation 16, where you see the dragon, the beast and the false prophet. You have 3 entities. You always have 3 entities. Ellen White talks about when Protestantism is going to grasp the hand of the papacy and into spiritualism, when there's this threefold union. That's the threefold union that she's talking about, the 6th, 7th and 8th head, and you'll always see this support system that there's 2 entities holding the papacy up. And you see it clearly here in this history that's given in Daniel 7.
Sorry, maybe it's one of the questions, but who's represented by the 4th beast?
Rome. The 4th beast is Rome. This is in this history it's pagan Rome, isn't it?